They say some doors, once opened, never close again. That evil, when it finds a place to rest, refuses to leave, thriving in the shadows we ignore, feeding on silence and secrecy. In 2025, there are still locations across the United States where people check in, but something else checks them. Our first story begins in the picturesque town of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, where the Crescent Hotel stands proudly on a hill, elegant, historic, and cursed. Known as America's most haunted hotel, its legends go back more than a century. But there is one particular room, room 313, that still sends seasoned paranormal investigators running. In 2021, a young nurse named Haley Trent took a weekend vacation with her fiancé to the Crescent. They stayed in room 313 because, ironically, Haley loved ghost stories. She grew up watching horror movies, laughing at seances, daring spirits to show themselves. But this wasn't a movie. On the second night, at 3:13 a.m., Haley woke up screaming. She claimed something had held her down, pressed her chest so hard she thought her ribs would crack. Her fiancé, Michael, turned on the light, but she was alone. He had been sleeping on the couch after an argument earlier. There were bruises across her chest. The hotel called emergency services, but she refused to be taken to the hospital, muttering something about him still being there. 2 days later, she disappeared. No one saw her check out. No one saw her leave. Police found her phone still charging on the bedside table, her car untouched in the parking lot. Surveillance footage? Gone. Room 313's camera feed mysteriously corrupted. The only room with a missing file that week. Some said it was technical failure. Others whispered about Norman Baker, the infamous fake doctor who ran a cancer hospital in the building during the 1930s. He was known for bizarre experiments and claimed to be able to cure death itself. Many of his patients were buried in the surrounding woods without paperwork, without ceremony, just gone. But what chills the blood is what came next. Since Haley's disappearance, every guest who has stayed in room 313 has reported identical dreams. A woman in a Nurse S uniform, sobbing in the corner, her mouth sewn shut with wire. One elderly guest had a heart attack after screaming that she wouldn't stop pointing at the mirror. Paranormal researchers brought in thermal cameras and EMF detectors, but they always fail just before 3:13 a.m. One group captured a chilling EVP, a soft whisper, barely audible, but when enhanced, it clearly says, "Don't let him in." No one knows who he is. The hotel refuses to shut down the room, citing freedom of belief, but employees rotate shifts to avoid working near it. One maid resigned after saying the bed makes an impression by itself, as if someone heavy lies down when no one's in the room. It's 2025, and still, the room is active, still open to guests, still unsolved. But what makes it worse? This year, another woman vanished. Same room, same time, same marks. And the mirror? Now it cracks at 3:13 every third night, and then heals itself before morning. If you're enjoying this descent into darkness, remember to subscribe for more forbidden stories, the ones most fear to tell, because this is just the beginning. What happens when a room becomes a trap for souls? And what happens when those souls learn to whisper back? In Harlan, Iowa, surrounded by miles of flat, endless farmland, there's a field where no birds sing, no animals graze, and no farmer dares to harvest past sundown. It looks like any other cornfield from the road, but locals know better. They call it the Whispering Acres, and they don't speak its name after dark. This isn't just a ghost story. It's a pattern, a living case still unfolding in 2025. Every autumn, at least one person disappears within its rows. No footprints, no belongings, not even broken stalks. Just gone, as if the soil swallows them whole. In 1999, a 17-year-old named Connor Bates went missing during a hazing dare. He was told to run from one end of the field to the other before midnight. The group waited on the opposite side. He never emerged. When they called out, they heard rustling, then a whisper. "He sees you now." The field was searched for days with dogs, drones, and heat sensors. Nothing. But then the whispers began. First to Connor's girlfriend, who said she heard him whisper her name from her closet at night. Then to his mother, who was found sleepwalking into the corn at 3 a.m. 3 nights in a row. The sheriff, traumatized, left town after reportedly seeing Connor's face appear in the condensation on his cruiser's windshield, mouth agape, eyes gouged out. By 2005, there were 5 disappearances, each in October, each near the center of the field. Locals began claiming the corn rustled without wind. Paranormal experts came and quickly left. One claimed the field is a non-Euclidean space, a geometric impossibility that folds in on itself. Another swore it was a thin place, a veil between this world and another, perhaps older, perhaps hungry. And then there's the journal. In 2013, a boy named Tyler Jennings was found on the edge of the field after going missing for 3 days. He was barefoot, sunburned, and unblinking. He never spoke again, but he drew. Hundreds of pages of stick figures, some with no mouths, some with gaping voids for eyes. One image repeated over 50 times. A tall figure in the center of the field with elongated fingers, one arm raised, pointing. Underneath, scribbled in childish handwriting, "Do not follow the rouse." The journal is still held in the Harlan County archives, locked in a box labeled Unexplained. In 2021, drone footage captured something chilling, a perfectly symmetrical crop pattern not visible from the ground, resembling a human eye. It vanished by the following morning, corn stalks inexplicably straightened. As of 2025, there have been 3 more disappearances. The most recent just last month, a seasoned journalist named Elise Durant ventured in with a body cam. Her footage, streamed live for a small horror fan base, abruptly cut to static after she whispered, "Wait, I think it's breathing." Authorities searched again, found no sign of her, but recovered the cam. The audio? Unusable. But the final frame showed something wrong. A face too large to be human, just beneath the surface of the corn, smiling. The landowners want to sell, but no buyers come. The state refuses to intervene. And the locals, they simply don't walk near it after dusk. Because in Harlan, the corn doesn't just grow, it listens. And sometimes, it answers. But what if what's listening is learning? In the blistering heat of Phoenix, where concrete melts and the horizon flickers like a fever dream, there's a winding strip of asphalt locals whisper about. Deer Valley Road. By day, it's ordinary. But when the sun dips below the desert hills, something ancient stirs along its edges. For decades, people have spoken of the Walker, a figure seen pacing the roadside at night, barefoot, twitching, never blinking. Most thought it was an urban legend, but in the summer of 2018, it became something else entirely. Olivia Ramirez, a 24-year-old hospice nurse, was driving home after a long shift. It was 2:47 a.m. She called her roommate, panicked, whispering that someone had stepped in front of her car. She said she didn't hit them, they just appeared. Then the call cut. Her car was found idling on the side of the road, door wide open, no sign of Olivia. A smear of blood ran down the windshield, but the inside of the car was untouched. For 3 days, search teams combed the desert scrub, heat nearly killing 2 officers. Then Olivia reappeared, walking down the same stretch of Deer Valley Road. But she wasn't the same. Her voice was different, monotone, slowed, as if underwater. She didn't blink for minutes at a time, and worst of all, she no longer recognized her own mother. Doctors diagnosed her with trauma-induced psychosis. But the priest her family consulted had another name for it, possession. Olivia would scratch words into her bedsheets at night, symbols that resembled ancient Sumerian glyphs. She began fasting, saying the desert was feeding her. Her voice would change during prayer, spitting in languages no one could identify. When a paranormal team visited her in 2020, their audio recorded one phrase, whispered on loop: "He walked before roads were carved." Some believe the land itself is cursed, that something predates the city, a spirit or entity tied to the earth. Elders from the nearby tribal lands refuse to speak of it, only saying the road crosses a wound that was never allowed to heal. One night in 2022, Olivia vanished again. Her hospital room torn apart from the inside, security footage corrupted. But what's worse is that since then, 5 other people have experienced the same event: a late-night walk down Deer Valley Road, followed by vanishing, followed by reappearance, and then radical psychological collapse. In every case, the victims scratch the same symbols. In 2025, 2 hikers discovered a shallow cave near the road. Inside were bones, human and animal, along with walls covered in crude drawings of figures with no faces, their hands raised in surrender or worship. A local archaeologist dated them to 3,000 years before any recorded settlement. But the cave collapsed the day after it was found. Now, authorities are silent, and the streetlights along Deer Valley flicker every night around 3 a.m., despite regular maintenance. Locals report cold spots in the air, even in 110-degree heat. Olivia's mother still leaves water and bread by the roadside, just in case her daughter walks back again. Because what is clear now is that the road doesn't just lead somewhere, it brings something back. And in Phoenix, people have learned to keep their eyes on the road and never stop if someone's standing still. But what if the next person taken doesn't come back alone? Something tells me you're ready to go deeper. But before we continue, if you're brave enough to walk these roads with us, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We tell stories most wouldn't dare whisper aloud, and the next one is darker than all before. Buried in the thick, suffocating trees of Black Hollow, West Virginia, is a legend older than the coal that once made the land rich and cursed. The locals call him the Laughing Man. They never describe his face, because no one who's seen it speaks again. It's not a monster, not a ghost, not even a demon in the traditional sense. He's something that should not exist. And yet, he walks the hollow. The earliest known account dates back to 1912, when a group of miners vanished inside Shaft 7. Weeks later, a rescue team was sent in. They found the walls etched with deep claw marks, and a single phrase written in blood across the elevator door: "He laughed last." None of the miners were recovered, but the cave-in didn't kill them. How do we know? Because one of the rescuers, James Harker, was found curled in the fetal position outside the shaft, eyes wide, blood leaking from his ears. He never spoke again, but he would occasionally laugh. High-pitched, inhuman laughter, like a recording played backward. And in 2025, the laughter continues. Every October, like clockwork, someone disappears in Black Hollow. They say it always starts the same. First, the sound of twigs snapping, then distant laughter, echoing like it's being filtered through water. Not joyful, not even mocking, just wrong, as if the sound itself has teeth. In 1993, 4 high school seniors hiked into the woods on Halloween night, cameras rolling. The footage, now sealed by the FBI, was leaked in 2008. The final moments showed one of the teens whispering, "He's right behind us, but he doesn't have a face." Then static. The police found their tents shredded from the inside. No blood, no bodies. Just a cassette tape placed in the middle of the campfire, untouched by flame. The tape. 10 minutes of laughter, and something breathing underneath. Locals say he only comes for those who enter the hollow with disrespect, those who mock the forest, who forget to ask permission. There's even an old folk rule. If you ever hear laughter, stand still. Do not speak. Do not turn around. And whatever you do, don't laugh back. In 2019, a cryptid researcher named Colleen Ruther went in with heat-tracking drones and sensors. She lasted one night, Her final message was a voicemail to her brother, sent at 3:36 a.m. In it, she says, "I found him. I understand now. It's not his face that matters. It's what's behind it." Her body was found 3 miles from the last known location, perched 15 feet up in a tree, eyes wide open, smile carved into her cheeks. Her fingernails were embedded into her own neck, her equipment never recovered. And now in 2025, a new mystery has started. A podcast team from DC ventured in last month. 3 members, 1 returned. He won't speak, just draws spirals over and over, muttering, "Laughter is the invitation." Black Hollow has been closed to the public, yet every week new tire tracks are seen at the edge of the forest. Thrill seekers, skeptics, or those simply called. Because the laughing man doesn't hunt. He waits. And once you hear his laughter, something inside you changes. A shadow grows, a thought blooms, and the worst part isn't what he'll do when he finds you. It's what he'll leave behind, inside you, and what happens when it starts laughing too. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of Birmingham, Alabama, there stands a crumbling red brick church, no longer listed on any map. Locals refer to it in hushed tones as the church that screams. Officially decommissioned in 1974, it is said the building was condemned after an unexplained fire consumed half the interior during a midnight service, yet no source of ignition was ever found. But what terrified investigators most wasn't the charred pews or melted altar. It was the fact that every cross inside had been bent backwards. Since then, the structure has been abandoned, yet reports from 2025 still speak of sounds, long, piercing wails that rise from its hollow interior in the dead of night. It's not the wind, it's not metal grinding. Witnesses describe it as something alive, in agony, yet trying to sing. In 1991, a group of teenagers dared each other to spend the night inside. Only 2 emerged, and they were never the same. One lost her hearing permanently, the other was found catatonic, repeating a single phrase for days. The choir's still singing. She later described voices, hundreds of them, chanting in harmony, not in praise, but in grief. The screams, she said, weren't random. They were liturgical, structured, ritualistic. But who or what was leading them? Local urban legends say the church was built atop a Civil War mass grave, and that during construction in 1872, workers found bones they were instructed to rebury quietly. But some say the bones weren't human. In 2007, paranormal researchers brought in thermal cameras and audio equipment. All their footage was destroyed. Their equipment melted in their truck overnight. One member, a skeptic named Brent Holloway, went missing inside the chapel for 12 minutes. When they found him, his ears were bleeding and his mouth was filled with ash. He claimed he had been inside for hours and that something in the pulpit was trying to enter through the sound. A spectrogram analysis of one surviving audio sample revealed a pattern. Somehow the screams formed an ancient alphabet. It matched no known language, but scholars who examined it noticed a resemblance to pre-pharaonic phonetics, spoken in reverse. As of 2025, the screams have become louder, more frequent. A local barista living 2 blocks away told reporters she wakes up every night at 3:14 a.m. with her ears ringing, nose bleeding, and a song in her head that she's never heard but can hum perfectly. Her dog won't go near the church, neither will most birds. A priest attempted to bless the building last year. He collapsed after 5 minutes, babbling about voices in the cracks and the altar beneath the altar. His superiors have since denied the event took place. But satellite images from February of this year show something strange. The church's shadow doesn't match its structure. It's too long, too narrow, and it seems to bend. Some believe the church is a doorway, not to hell, not even to another dimension, but to something that feeds on worship. the twisted kind, born from fear and madness, because worship in its purest form isn't about praise, it's about submission, and this church demands it. So if you're in Birmingham and hear something scream in the distance, don't follow it, don't record it, don't even listen, because the moment you understand the sound, it understands you too. And what's been waiting in silence begins to awaken. There was a town in Maine called Enoch's Wake, or at least there used to be. Mentioned in government census records until 1987, it once held a population of 612 people, a single school, a police outpost, and a modest but thriving lumber industry. And then, sometime between 1991 and 1994, it simply vanished. No fire, no disaster, no evacuation notice, just gone. Roads leading into it now twist endlessly in loops. GPS devices glitch, batteries die within minutes, and compasses spin in wild, silent panic. The only reason we know it was ever real is because of a woman named Meredith Kane, who was born there. She moved away in 1989, returned to visit family in 1992, and hasn't been able to find the town since. In her interviews, she doesn't speak with nostalgia, only confusion. "I remember the town square," she once said. "I remember my father's sawmill, the water tower, the sound the wind made when it blew through the pine trees." But no one else seems to. The US Geological Survey lists the area where Enoch's Wake should be as non-existent terrain. Not empty, non-existent. Photographs taken from aerial drones show only dense forest where streets and houses once stood. No foundations, no rubble, just impossibly tall trees in unnatural grid-like formations. In 2006, a documentary crew tried to locate the remnants of the town after a local hunter claimed to have stumbled upon a rusted swing set in the woods, still gently swaying. They followed his directions. What they found was a clearing where no birds sang, no bugs crawled, and in the center, a single white doorframe standing alone, freestanding, perfectly clean. One crew member, a man named Joel, passed through it as a joke. He was never seen again. His voice, however, was recorded by a boom mic still active during the moment of entry. He whispered, "It's still here, but the sky is wrong." His team called authorities, but the frame vanished the next morning. In 2023, an unmarked envelope was delivered to a radio station in Bangor. Inside, a torn page from a school yearbook from Enoch's Wake Elementary. All the children's eyes were crossed out, but the words beneath them had been altered. Where once it said, "Class of 1985, it now read, "Those who never left." And behind the children, barely visible, was a shape. Not a person, not an animal, just a length, a darkness with angles, a pattern that seems to move if you stare too long. The government denies any record of the town's erasure, but Freedom of Information Act requests have turned up dozens of blacked-out documents referencing Event EW Null. Every 3 years, hikers go missing in the forests north of Lake Umbagog. And in every case, the last photo on their phones is the same, rows of pine trees too perfectly aligned, with what appears to be a telephone pole. That casts no shadow. Paranormal theorists believe Enoch's Wake never vanished. It was taken, not destroyed, not erased, relocated, to a place where time folds, where space forgets its own logic, where reality frays. And if that's true, then the people may still be there too, trapped in a repeating loop, screaming silently behind those trees that don't grow from soil, but from memory. So if you're hiking in northern Maine and the air suddenly grows too still, if your watch freezes at 3:17 p.m. and the trees start to bend toward you, turn back. Enoch's Wake doesn't want to be found, but it remembers who's searching. In the arid stillness of Phoenix, Arizona, dozens of unrelated people began reporting the same dream in late 2020. Each unaware of the others, each convinced they were alone in their experience. The dream was always the same, an endless hallway, pitch black, but for flickering lights above, and at the far end, a man, or something pretending to be one. Tall, impossibly thin, clothed in a suit that seemed stitched from shadows, his face obscured by a veil of static like an analog television left on a dead channel. They called him the Static Man. At first, it was dismissed: sleep paralysis, mass suggestion, social media echoes. But by 2022, local psychologists and sleep researchers began quietly meeting behind closed doors, comparing notes, because the cases were increasing. Children were drawing the same figure. Adults in separate therapy groups described the same suffocating scent of burnt copper, the same phrase whispered before waking: "You're almost ready." But ready for what? One victim, a schoolteacher named Malik Rios, documented a month of recurring dreams involving the Static Man. On the 30th day, his journal stopped. He was found in his bathtub, unresponsive, eyes wide open, body locked in a state between sleep and wakefulness. Doctors labeled it unexplained catatonic regression, but in the corner of his room, drawn in chalk that no one remembered seeing before, was a doorway, perfectly rectangular, with static lines radiating outward. In 2025, cases have spread. People across Arizona and now Nevada are reporting what they believe are shared dreams. They wake up with matching cuts, symbols burned lightly into their skin, identical numbers whispered into their ears before dawn. One woman, a former nurse, awoke with her bedside digital clock flashing 1361. The next night, she recorded her sleep. At 3:12 a.m., her camera captured her body rising, standing perfectly upright for 7 minutes, whispering in reverse, "He's not coming. He's already here." Digital forensics later revealed a glitch in the video feed, a split-second frame that, when enhanced, showed a face pressed against the window of her second-story apartment. No ladder, no balcony, just that same obscured, static-shrouded face. The phenomenon caught the attention of Dr. Evelyn Mora, a dream neurologist who had spent years studying lucid states. She attempted an experiment using transcranial stimulation to confront the Static Man inside her own dreams. Her assistant claimed she screamed once and never spoke again. Her lips still move at night, but the sound she makes can't be replicated by any human vocal cords. Audio analysis shows frequencies beyond the upper threshold of hearing. Frequencies that match radio signals detected by SETI in 1996, never publicly explained. The horror of it isn't that this thing visits you while you sleep. It is that you recognize him. People claim an overwhelming sense of déjà vu when seeing his form, like they've known him their whole lives, like he's always been waiting at the edge of their dreams. Some speculate the Static Man is an ancient thought form, born from trauma and fed by consciousness, now strong enough to cross thresholds. Others say he's not a dream at all, but a signal, a viral presence transmitted through stories, images, belief, that simply hearing about him opens the door. So if you dream of a hallway tonight and you see a tall figure waiting at the end, do not run, do not scream, do not speak. Wake yourself if you can. Because if he reaches you, if he touches you, you don't wake up as yourself anymore. And those who do return from such dreams say he always asks the same question: what will you do when you are no longer alone? The most chilling part: no one remembers what they answer. On June 11th, 2019, Flight 407 was scheduled for a routine domestic trip from Denver to Portland. 2 hours in the air, clear weather, a seasoned crew. Nothing unusual. That is, until 40 minutes after takeoff, when the aircraft vanished from radar for precisely 6 minutes. No distress call, no turbulence, no warning. When it reappeared, all systems were intact. The pilot reported nothing strange, but the passengers weren't the same. Several claimed to have lost time, waking as if from sleep they didn't remember falling into. One woman, a librarian from Oregon, filed a formal report with the FAA saying she woke up in her seat soaking wet, even though no fluids had been spilled. Another passenger was found crying uncontrollably, repeating the words, "They said not to look out the window." At first, these were dismissed as post-flight delusions or mild altitude sickness, until the audio logs were reviewed. The black box recorded only ambient cockpit sounds for the duration of the flight. But in that 6-minute window there is something. Not speech, not mechanical failure. A low harmonic pulse, deep and rhythmic, like a mechanical heartbeat. Audio engineers later enhanced it and found what appeared to be whispered fragments layered into the pulse. Words in Latin, names, screams. Most chilling was this phrase, repeated 3 times, "We are still on board." Following this, multiple passengers began reporting strange phenomena at home. Objects vanishing, clocks freezing at 3:16 a.m., shadows moving against light. One man, an accountant named Eric Malone, swore his own reflection stopped mimicking him for a moment, then smiled. He took his own life a week later, leaving behind a note that read only, "I didn't survive the flight." In 2020, the FAA quietly pulled Flight 407 from its rotation, changing its call sign and avoiding any route over that same air corridor near the Colorado-Wyoming border. But what investigators uncovered next was far worse. A Freedom of Information Act request revealed that Flight 407 wasn't the first. In 1983, a military flight, call sign Echo Victor 7, disappeared in that same corridor for 7 minutes. When it landed, the pilot was dead. Not from trauma, from cellular degradation, as if he had aged 40 years in the span of minutes. And there are more. Dozens of unreported incidents over the past 4 decades involving aircraft that lose contact near the Black Corridor, an invisible zone of turbulence that some believe isn't natural. Some believe it's a fracture, a tear, a place where the veil thins and time itself stutters, where something waits. In 2023, a leaked NSA report suggested the existence of Zone Echo, an anomalous stretch of airspace where quantum readings are inconsistent and gravity fields distort in microbursts. They theorize that in those 6 minutes, Flight 407 didn't just disappear, it slipped into where no one knows. But some believe the flight was duplicated, that what returned wasn't the original flight, or at least not all of it, and that somewhere, in another layer of reality, the real Flight 407 is still flying, trapped in an endless loop over an invisible wound in the sky. Even now, in 2025, passengers from that flight continue to experience symptoms, migraines, hallucinations, dissociation. One survivor recently entered a coma after speaking in a language no linguist has been able to identify. On her skin, during examination, were faint imprints resembling fingerprints inside her veins. When questioned, the remaining crew members have all vanished from public life. No interviews, no comments. But one anonymous source leaked a chilling phrase allegedly written in the Captain S log the day after landing. "We weren't alone up there." Something got in. If you're flying near the Rockies and your ears pop harder than usual, if the lights flicker and the flight attendants fall silent, check the time. And whatever you do, don't look out the window. And maybe the scariest part isn't the entities, the vanishing flights, or the forests that devour time. It's this. In every one of these stories, someone tried to tell us. Someone screamed into the void, documented the signs, recorded the voices, left behind scars, but we ignored them, or worse, we mocked them. Or, because the unknown is easier to deny than to confront. But these 8 cases, still active, still unexplained in 2025, aren't going away. They persist like open wounds in the map of America. They breathe under the skin of our cities. Maybe they were always there. Maybe they were just waiting for a time when enough people were too distracted, too numb, too blind to see what was right in front of them. And if you think this is where it ends, it's not. Because right now, as you listen to my voice, somewhere, someone is knocking on a wall that shouldn't be hollow. Someone is watching a loved one speak in a voice that isn't theirs. Someone is staring at a window that reflects something wrong. So you have a choice: pretend it's all fiction or pay attention. Re-listen to each case. Reconnect the dots, search the names, check the records. You'll see none of this was made up. And if any of it ever happens to you, write everything down, because no one will believe you. Not at first, but your story could be the 9th. Until then, sleep with the lights on, and whatever you do, don't answer if something knocks 3 times after midnight. You already know. It's not a visitor, and if this is the kind of truth you're brave enough to keep facing, subscribe. We're not done yet. We're never done. Something is still listening, and it knows you heard this.